Hello and welcome to ERUPT, the home for how businesses can scale and transform. Throughout this podcast, we aim to inspire and educate to help you and your business thrive. Across the course of our episodes, we'll be interviewing industry leaders to uncover some of the challenges across the world of work. We aim to give an insight into some of the fastest growing organisations across HR and technology. Please follow us on our journey to ERUPT and elevate your business. This episode is from our ERUPT Learning and Talent Conference, which was hosted in September 2022. The conference focused on topics from developing emotional intelligence to creating a transparent future career. Within this episode, Pether, who is founder and Managing Director at PeopleSmart SAS, talks about different generations and cultural and competency frameworks. I hope you enjoy, and make sure you check out the Go ERUPT website for further content and for all videos on demand.
So let me start maybe by just sharing what I observed as a definition for the word bold. Two things I picked up in the dictionary that I looked at online. Definition: fearless before danger, or showing a fearless and daring spirit. So I thought we would just start by looking at that definition, and then kind of for all of us to go back and think of a corporate environment or an entrepreneurial environment that we are familiar with, as we reflect on together some of my insights on this topic. So with that in mind, when I say corporates or corporations, that could be any size of organization, right down to an organization of maybe, 500, 1,000 employees. So it's, from small to very large, but also an entrepreneurial environment where we're looking at organizations that fall more into the startup or scale-up category. So bold decision-making would be the first point that I would like to make. What is bold decision-making? Well, some of my observations over the last years, certainly since 2020, a lot has gone on in that time. Rethinking organizational structures. It would be something I think would be a good example of bold leadership, having the courage to consider whether the organizational structure you have is absolutely in line with where your organization is looking to go from now into the future. Have we got the right people in place? Have we got the right people in place if we're an international global organization? Have we got them in place in the right geographies, in the right cultures that we need them, again, in light of the future of the organization? Getting the right balance and right mix in terms of diversity, again, similar to the previous point, but think about the diversity that would be needed for an organization as they continue to grow and develop. And that might mean making some changes or bringing on resources, diverse resources in an organization, which may be different to what the organizational makeup is today. In terms of products and services, it's very easy, isn't it, when we have products and services but that are selling well, but things are changing so quickly. We need to be bold in terms of decisions we made to potentially, stop producing or produce differently the products and services that we are getting out there to our clients or consumers in the different markets that we operate. But also our client portfolio. Maybe in light of a change of vision, mission, change of leadership, maybe there are clients that we want more of, maybe there are clients that we want less of. All of those things, from my perspective, fall into the bold decision-making category. Second on my list is really boldly rethinking organizational structures. We need to consider an engaging culture, a culture where people want to come, they want to be part of that organization, they want to give their best, they want to perform at their best, but a culture of organization that is engaging for different generations. Those individuals, earlier stages in their careers, and those, of course, maybe well into their 60s that are also part of the workforce in the organization. So that point, as you can tell, links very clearly also into this idea of diversity. How can I flex? An organizational culture that flexes, is flexible, and allows a community of employees, resources to work effectively and generously together. I also believe that fits under this theme of rethinking the organizational cultures we have. And of course, you have to be bold to make those changes because often they are legacy organizational cultures or legacy structures. There's a lot of things going on in the marketplace right now where we're being asked to help out in redefining the organizational culture and the behavioral frameworks or competency frameworks that go alongside that. Sometimes it's tweaking, sometimes it's quite radical changes in light of where the business would like to continue to grow. The third topic is bold executive teams. Now, I know that's always a little bit of a, let's say, a political topic. I'll be honest, the organizations I work for, when I'm operating, my colleagues are operating at a very senior level, it's very interesting when you walk into that executive room, when you're at the top table, and the sort of things that you observe going on there. Sometimes the organizational executive team is very aligned to ultimately what the rest of the organization would like to do. And in many cases, they're almost lagging behind or sort of disconnected. So some things to consider in terms of bold executive teams. And I say that to those of you who have some sort of influence over this or often find yourselves in this space with them. Are they operating in their comfort zone, or are they actually challenging and making a point of challenging the status quo? Are they clones of each other? When you walk into the room, do they all look the same, or is there sufficient diversity within that group? And if there isn't, and you're comfortable, then there's no harm in calling that out. I would even say that also fits into bold. Are they collectively aligned, or is there more ego in the room than anything else? And it's quite a political landscape. Those of you who know those spaces will know what I'm talking about. When you walk into the room, you can feel it. So what sort of energy is actually in the room? Also on that topic, I'm sure that some comments were made in the previous panel, is the topic of accessibility. How accessible, how easy is it to talk to the people at the top of the organization? How authentic and real are they? How comfortable are you speaking to them, and how much do you feel you need to adapt? Because otherwise it doesn't feel safe. Digital environmental representation, digital technology, what's going on from a climate perspective, ecologically, environmentally. Is there enough interest? Is there enough time being allocated to some of those really core global themes at the moment? I have a little saying that I use quite often. It's called forgiveness, not permission. Is if you do have a bold executive team, we should be able to get forgiveness rather than to always ask for permission. So consider whether you working into or around an executive team are comfortable with that notion and actually trying things out, and you know that mistakes are actually okay to be made. And finally, on that point, inclusive or exclusive, are they including each other and other people in decision-making processes, which links into the first point, or does it feel rather exclusive and you feel like you're a little bit on the outside? So those things come to mind when I consider bold leadership. So it's around the decision-making, it's around rethinking organizational cultures, and it's around having executive teams that are really going to make the difference. Let me also share a few thoughts in relation to where bold leadership and empowering leadership really come together. And again, this is the theme of the conference today. So let's just reflect together on how that all sort of fits in and slots in together. For those leaders out there amongst you, for those people who have influence over leaders and leadership structures in your organizations or as part of the suppliers that you represent here, a couple of maybe just thoughts on that topic. Mine is around be demanding but not perfectionist. It's funny, we do a lot of work for different organizations where we design things from scratch. So that's always a bit bold and a bit risky for those people doing it for the first time. And it's always very interesting to observe to what extent the client organization we work with look to try and get it absolutely perfect for a pilot situation. And those organizations that say, you know what, 80% is okay, because the pilot's going to be the learning process, where after that we can make it probably even more aligned to what we're looking for. And we want to be able to use those consumer groups, the clients, the participants, to actually tell us whether this is working for them or not. So this idea of being demanding but not perfectionist, because perfectionism is almost no longer, it's hard to be a perfectionist in the existing, quickly evolving digital scaling up situation and environment. Getting high standards or having high standards, but not micromanaging. So empowering leadership is, it's okay to be demanding, it's okay to set high standards, but if you micromanage, you'll put people off. You will also take away their feeling of being empowered. Interesting word, empowered, isn't it? I haven't actually found many languages where the word empowered exists, to give the power and the strength to others. And here we have in English, obviously, it's a wonderful word, but it's not so easy to translate and give meaning to in other languages, which I think is quite interesting. Thirdly, allowing mistakes and focusing on learning. Allowing mistakes to happen. I remember working for a large global cosmetics company once, and they had this kind of motto of learning through making mistakes. It was not always demonstrated and role modeled by all the leaders in the organization, probably because they were too perfectionist and micromanaging the situation. But really allow for that. It's interesting when mistakes happen. An empowering leader says things like, well, you worked hard, this is what came out. Now let's look together and try and undo what happened. And I also take accountability for this mistake that happened. That is what an empowering leader would say, and there certainly would not be any blame in the process. Nelson Mandela had a very interesting saying, and it was, I never lose, I either win or I learn. And I think that's one of the things I think we can take from that particular point. Then we have trust, so the fourth item. People need to feel your trust. You don't say, I trust you, because I think that has the opposite impact what we're trying to achieve. But certainly, people need to feel you trust them without even you saying the words. And I can guarantee if they feel you trust them, they will work hard not to disappoint you. You don't have to worry, you have to trust the process of trust. Celebrating success together. Finding the good things. Often as human beings, we can be quite critical. We often look at the empty glass. Let's see what is working and celebrate those really small wins together. And then feedback cultures, a large organization we're working with at the moment is focusing very heavily on creating a feedback culture. It's such a sort of, been around such a long time concept, and yet it remains fundamental for people to feel that it's okay to do things differently, try things out, make mistakes, not get it right the first time, but also give feedback to their bosses, because maybe bosses and leaders and managers are not setting the environment right for them to actually feel comfortable and safe enough to do new things. Then we have embracing digital. Quite pragmatic insights on this one. This is something I'm also, personally looking at and thinking about. How can I get better in this space? Not all of us are, digitally super savvy. I would say I'm definitely on a learning curve for this one. But certainly my observations and my learning so far has been bring in the resources who have strong digital skills. Find those unique resources, who may be a little bit funky and digital and techy, but you know what? Your organization probably needs them, and you definitely do. And be willing to learn from them, ask all those silly questions. They'll be more than willing to show you how things work, which may not be obvious. Also give people the resources and freedom. Freedom is a word I think is super important in today's working environment, especially across different generations, to do their jobs remotely really well via the technology, without the pressure of coming into the office all the time. I have observed some very interesting things in the marketplace about organizations trying to force people back into the office. And people are digging their heels in. And if they are forced to do something they don't want to, at some point something will break. And if they're good resources, they will probably go somewhere else. I think that's relatively easy to understand. So think about what is it that you want to do to allow more freedom and autonomy to people. Maybe it's different tools that you offer them, different types of resources to do that effectively. Maybe it's a policy, a procedure on working remotely a certain number of times or weeks or months a year. Be bold, make it months rather than just weeks. On that topic again, certainly being curious yourself. as a professional, as a leader in the organization, being curious to keep ahead of the game. Look at some of your legacy tools, your legacy platforms that you use, the legacy technology, and maybe make a bold decision about an investment you're going to make. Go for a tool or platform or some sort of technical solution where there hasn't been a huge amount of, it's not as well known, and not many organizations are using it. It's kind of new. It's the new kid on the block. Be bold and maybe consider putting that into your organization and certainly promoting it. So, rather than going with legacy, be curious and stretch yourself to possibly put things in place where you are truly embracing digital. Those are my key thoughts on the link between bold leadership and embracing digital, as well as empowering leadership. So leaving you with 3 questions here. So you think you're bold. What bold decision did I make this week would be a question that I would often, at least weekly, ask myself. How can we, or do we need to, rethink our organizational culture? If the answer is yes, then take that pretty seriously. And if you're not sure, ask other people, because maybe they can actually tell you. And lastly, how inspirational or how effective is our executive team today? Thank you very much.
This podcast was brought to you by ERUPT at Annapurna, the #1 platform that case studies the organisations that not only disrupt, but those that erupt. Please visit our new Go ERUPT website for more content and log in to watch the full episodes from the conference. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure to watch out for the next.